because I keep thy precepts. I have refrained my feet from every evil way that I might keep thy word. I have not departed.
I guess there's no fade on that song. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. Having a little issue with connecting to the internet today because of the dark storm clouds that have been passing over overnight. It's not currently storming, but if the study gets interrupted, it may be something that you need to come back to. And we're not on Psalm 1. We're still on Psalm 37, like the title card said. No, okay. Yeah, we left off at 17. Okay. So, anyways, so this study may get interrupted if that's the case. I had misgivings about conducting it today because of the weather, and it's frustrating when you're trying to watch something and it just keeps getting interrupted, and that's on my end. So, I mean, I can't control it, but it's just here. So if you have problems, it's due to my connection. Okay, verse 17. For the arms of the wicked shall be broken, but the Lord upholdeth the righteous. Remember, this whole psalm is sort of like it's a comparison to how the God deals with the wicked and the righteous, and how the righteous ought to interact with the wicked. As far as, do we get upset? Do we lose our cool, so to speak? By that I mean act rashly in a way that would not be productive. I mean, because the wicked, there's never one way necessarily to deal with everyone. Yeah, I mean that's obviously for depending on who you're interacting with. It's like there's different. There's like my wickedness, and then there's like real wickedness. You know what I mean? Like someone who is threatening your life or the life of someone you care about or life of someone you don't care about, really. The threatening someone's life, that's another level, murderous intent. Versus, oftentimes we think of the wicked, and it's just people who are annoying, in our lives because our lives are so simple. As far as, I should say our lives are so convenient. That's really the word I want to use. Much more convenient than the lives of our ancestors. We've had our actual, our clothes come out of a machine. We had robots to wash our clothes. That's a big deal. It's not a very intelligent robot, but it's, basically a machine doing the work of a human, increasing our productivity. And having, and why do I say that? Well, because I think that our softer existence causes us to be more sensitive to, like people who live in a land accustomed to peace are scandalized when any small thing happens that disturbs that, whereas someone growing up in like a war-torn country, doesn't think anything of things that would probably make a person who, was raised in a country like America, to feel very, especially if you're in one of the, because it is a diverse country. And I mean, it's diverse in terms of you could live in, an inner city and have, depending on the neighborhood, a very violent, almost warlike experience. I know they're exaggerating when they call these places war zones, but you could grow up there and then have a different experience, come out harder. But I do think we're all a bit soft. I mean, certainly compared to some. And so people feel wicked, but there's real dangerous wickedness. There's the kind of wicked who kill. who rob, who physically, will wound you, if not destroy you. And of course, there's the kind they talked about that sort of seduce you. You know what I mean? Like, they get away with it. The wicked get away with it. Why don't I just be wicked and get away with it too? And then I can have all the things the wicked have. I can be successful like them. I'll just do what they do. And you might even succeed in that, But, as I found in my life, as one set of problems goes away, another set is revealed, at least with the individual. That's why a lot of rich people aren't happy. Because the things that would make them happy are actually not things you can buy. I don't know if there are some people who are just made happy by owning things. Maybe there are people, they say money can't buy you, well, they say love or happiness, isn't it? I don't know. I've never had that. But they are certainly enough miserable rich people to let us know that it certainly is not a given. I mean, that having your financial difficulties solved does not solve all your problems. It may just reveal problems you didn't know you had. That's how life has been for me. It's like, you get one thing corrected, and then you realize underneath there was additional yuck to be scraped away. So somehow we rolled back a bit here. Anyways, but the wicked are out there. They're doing their thing, and the Lord is going to bring justice. That's the basic message thus far. For the arms of the wicked shall be broken, but the Lord upholdeth the righteous. It says the little that a righteous man hath is better than the riches of the wicked, and the arms of the wicked shall be broken. Arms symbolize power. We even call our weapons arms. They're armed, meaning they got something in their arm. I think that's where that comes from. And so it symbolizes power, strength. A little different than hands, which are more of indication of work. The work of your hands. It even is formulated like that many times. The work of our hands, the strength of my arm. The work of my hands, the strength of my arm. So when it talks about the arms being broken, it means that their strength, their ability to, a man with 2 broken arms is not very threatening, is he? And so the wicked shall become a non-threat. But the Lord, of course, will uphold the righteous. Those who please him are upheld. The Lord knoweth the days of the upright, and their inheritance shall be forever. I remember when we were talking about last time, when we talked about this, the verse where it says, "A little while, and the wicked shall not be. Thou shalt diligently consider his place, and it shall not be." There's no place for the wicked. And, he's talking about the meek inheriting the earth. And also, the righteous, their days being forever. Now, you could say, well, I think he just meant that like they have a lasting legacy. I mean, maybe it does mean that. It just means like, hey, yeah, the righteous, their inheritance shall be forever, meaning that which they leave to their descendants carries on in a legacy that's everlasting, I suppose. But I think of it more in terms of course, having an eternal inheritance with God in the heavens, as Jesus would teach. There's something very Sermon on the Mount about this. And I mean, there's a certain sort of reminder of certain aspects of it. Well, because it has a New Testament feel, because of the speaking of inheritances that last forever, The Lord knows the days of the upright. What does that mean? He knows your days. Well, it means he knows how many days you have to live on this earth, for one. He also knows how you spend your days, And it implies that, hey, he's watching. He sees your hard work. He sees your dedication, your faithfulness. And he's laying up an inheritance for you, which will be everlasting in the heavens, which no man can take away. They shall not be ashamed in the evil time, and in the days of famine they shall be satisfied. That's another scriptural theme in the prophets about the righteous, going through difficult times and coming through all right. When you go through times of famine and we survive. We go through times of war and we survive. It's not always true of every individual, though. People die in war. Good people, God-fearing people. You know what I mean? So it's not saying that anytime there's a famine, if you trust God, you got nothing to worry about as far as don't even bother trying to do anything about it. So that's important to remember as always. We trust in the Lord. In the evil time, they shall not be ashamed. That always seems a little weird there, but I just want to look it quickly up. Oh, I didn't bring you along. All right. There it is. They shall not be ashamed in the evil time. Oh, it's off your screen. Oh, there it is. Boosh in Hebrew. And I'm curious if it means the shame of paleness or the shame of redness. Oh, that's the pale one. Because there's two words that sometimes are translated shame, and one means to go pale, and one means to go flush. Both can be an sort of a indication of shame. Though I don't know, when I think of shame, I usually think of blush. But when you go pale is when all the blood drops out of your face. Or as they say, it may even be the same way that, the blood gets pulled from your extremities when you have cold feet, which is actually a thing. Like your feet go cold when you become frightened. And also your face, the blood drains from it. Not all the blood, but I mean, it gets less blood flow. I forgot why. I should ask my son, he probably knows. But anyway, so this is in the sense of pale, to be ashamed or disappointed or delayed. I prefer disappointed here. It just seems to make more sense, like to say, they shall not be disappointed in the evil time, and the days of evil they shall be satisfied. Because a shame here is set in opposition to satisfaction. And that's why I think that the other word is better. What was the word I just used? Disappointment. Disappointment, satisfaction. They seem like opposites, don't they? And I think that is the best translation here would be disappointment. You can see there's a sense of ashamedness in disappointment. Disappointment and shame are similar, but there's a little different thing. It's like pale is like a change in expectations. Even when you're surprised with fear, it's like you hadn't expected to see something fearful. So, they shall not be ashamed in the evil time. Evil times come, and we do not, in the times of famine. And the way I look at this is that God can supply all my needs at any time for whatever he needs me to do. If his destiny for me is to just die and starve to death, then I will. But if he's given me a mission to do something, then it doesn't matter how little food there is, I will get through and do what God has called me to do. But, I do not expect that preserving my natural life is the most important thing. And also, there is a degree in this, hey, when the lockdowns were coming, like when COVID-19 was breaking, I was watching, in March and in February as it was spreading, and in China and all that stuff. I remember I said to my wife, I'm like, I don't think this disease is going to be much of anything to worry about. But I do think there's going to be a panic, and that is something to worry about. And so first thing we're going to do is we're going to go heavily shopping in these few weeks before people start realizing that something's up. And so on the day when everyone was clearing out the stores, I didn't go shopping. I didn't have to. I'd already done everything I needed to. I didn't have to rush and buy. When everyone was clearing the shelves of toilet paper, I already had toilet paper. And it wasn't because I prayed and there was a miracle. It was because God opened my eyes and I saw I should prepare. Just like Noah building the ark. I mean, God didn't say, here's an ark. Oh, come out of the sky. He said, Noah, build me an ark. That's a friggin' huge piece of wood, you know? I look at my barn, right? I got a barn. I couldn't imagine building that thing. I could imagine it, but I mean, it's quite a imaginary thing, me trying to build it. It's quite a hefty use of imagination. I have a very, very vivid imagination and very broad-ranging. So I can imagine building that barn, and I tell you what, I can't imagine it being easy at all. Being a lot of hard work, man. You know, and so there's that aspect of which, you know, God helps you. But it's not that the Lord helps those that helps themselves. I don't believe in that. God can help you with no help from you. But if you can help yourself, you should help yourself because God gave you that ability. If you're able to, don't ask him to do it for you. It's silly. You know, well, they say, and it's not healthy either, you know. I remember someone talking about, you know, physical therapy for older people, and, you know, I have an older father, and I think about his physical well-being frequently. And they say, with the elderly, you should never do anything for them that they can still do for themselves. Meaning you let them just, you know, struggle and do because it's good for them if they can do it. Obviously, you don't want to put things on people that are too heavy, too burdensome. And the Lord understands what's too burdensome for us. He knows where our limits are, but He's very willing to take you to your limit, and even for your own good, maybe to take you beyond your limits to make you stronger. God could totally be into that, you know. So, you know, me going through a time of famine doesn't necessarily mean I just sit around and say, well, God will provide. I mean, what I do is I do everything that I can do, that God has given me to do, that is reasonable to do, that is intelligent and wise to do. I do all those things. And then if it doesn't work out, I trust that God will provide. You know what I mean? God will provide. But first, I'm going to do all the normal things that would provide things, all the just things I can predict will work or should work. You know what I mean? It's only when everything else breaks down and nothing works that I should look to God for something so basic. And obviously in times of famine, when there isn't food, I mean, we don't know famine anymore. You know, all we know is obesity. You know, in America, we have an obesity epidemic, you know. I mean, most people don't say to me anything particular about my weight, like, oh, you're really, you know, because I'm not gaining any more weight, you know, but I couldn't stay as lean as I wanted to, you know, but I'm at a range I've been, you know, like what I was in my 20s, you know, in my early 20s. And, what was I saying? Why did I bring up the weight thing? Just that, we're used to feasting. I'm just saying, like, technically, and in some countries, they think I was huge. I mean, I'm not a small person, but, you know, in America, people don't look at me and say, oh, a fat guy. They say he's a big guy, you know, because we're so used to obesity, you know. We take people who are pretty overweight, and we're like, well, they're just, you know, that's close to normal enough, because in our country, normal is kind of overweight. we're so used to, we don't know famine. God knows what's going to happen over the next year with food being destroyed and stuff. Because farmers were literally plowing lettuce under and dumping milk and stuff. We'll see. Because, I don't know, we do overproduce already. And hopefully they're able to compensate. I'm really, one of my concerns was that just the disruption in food supply would, at times here it was inconvenient, but what's it like in places where, they're hanging by an edge on every single day? They're walking the razor's edge between starvation and destruction all the time in some countries. How will it affect them? I don't know, but we'll find out. Or maybe we won't find out because they won't report on it, because they are, the journalism of today, they are the most irresponsible, reprehensible, wicked people I've ever seen in this world. They're not even pretending to be objective anymore. Not that anyone ever was objective, but they pretended to be. And not just in a silly way, like just pretend. They pretended, but by actually giving me reasons to think they were being objective. But there are ways in which we can be in the evil time, like the blood can run out of our face because we're like, oh, I messed up. I didn't save the food. I didn't do whatever. I'm left in. I'm facing. I think of Pale as like deer in the headlights, or looking at the oncoming train. In the sense of a shame of like astonishment at failure, or at seeing, the train coming. Meaning, like you're in an evil time, and there's famine, and like you're looking at what you've got in the future, and you're thinking like, we're gonna starve to death here. We don't know what that kind of calculation looks like. We've never experienced anything like that. I've experienced hunger through fasting. It's not the same when you know you could quit at any time. And you could just like, hey, I could just stop this fast anytime I want. That's not the same. That's not a significant stress compared to knowing. It's like I say, it's good to discipline the body and practice these things, as I've always attested that there's definitely benefits to using such things, but they do not really give you this true sense of the feeling. Though, like I said, just like this with the pandemic, I don't think for a moment that wearing a mask is the mark of the beast. But it's like the mark of the beast, totally like the mark of the beast. As far as the way people, look at the way people behave. If you're in a place that requires masks, and then you don't wear one, look at the way people are, and think about how some people are angry, some people don't care, some people are even happy. But, if it's the mark of the beast, it's going to be 10 times worse. Because it's going to be so much clearer about a religion. It's going to be about an absolute question, Right now, nobody knows what it means. If you're not wearing a mask, maybe you can't wear a mask. Some people understand that some people can't wear masks. Maybe it means you're being defiant. Maybe it just means you forgot your mask. They don't know. So there's a lot of benefit of the doubt. I don't feel constantly hurt. I felt a lot more the month where I, for the whole month, would not wear one. Not even for a moment, not even just to go. Because now I'll wrap around my neck and I'll like, what is this? Oh, it's a little flag. It's a piece of paper. I'll be wearing my mask. I wear it around my neck like this, like a scarf. And then when I go in the store, I walk through the door. I'm like, and then as soon as I get past the entryway, I just let it fall down. And if someone wants me to wear one, I'll wear it. But it's like generally I'm alone. I don't go to crowded stores. I'm alone. Nobody's anywhere around me. So I technically don't need one. So I'm not going to wear one when I technically don't need one. That's for sure. If I see an old lady reaching for cornflakes and I want to go grab the bran flakes right next to them, and she's wearing a mask, and I'll slip it up on my face and to get close. But it's all just for show, and it's all for politeness, and all for just I don't want the inconvenience of being harassed. But it's unhealthy and stupid. I still haven't recorded what I wanted to say about all that, which I'm sorry. I apologize. I hate teasing stuff and then not doing it. It is because it's on my mind and my heart, but it's like sometimes like getting the exact right words. Like, how are you going to say all that in one thing? Put it into 10 minutes or a half hour or an hour. I don't want to make a 2-hour video about masks. I don't. Maybe people would like a 2-hour video about masks. Some of my long studies, I've listened to them again. I'm like, I enjoy this. I see why some people might enjoy this. Some of them are quite good and they're quite long. So especially about a topic you're interested in, it's always easy to listen, right? All right. In the days of famine, they showed them to be satisfied. Doesn't mean you just have a free ticket. Oh, famine, no, we're not going to starve to death. Christians have starved. Count on it. But there's a deeper satisfaction. Certainly, in times of famine, when others are caught unaware, God often reveals to us that it's coming and allows us to prepare or escape or, live in it and find a way through. Like Elijah, the birds brought him food eventually. I believe the same thing. It's like if God doesn't want me to die, then the birds will bring me food, or the birds will commit suicide and become my food. I don't know. They'll fly over to me and die in my hands, if necessary. The Lord can work all those things. In the time of famine, the ones who are going to be satisfied are God's people. The ones who are not going to be ashamed in the evil time are God's people, the upright. But the wicked shall perish, and the enemies of the Lord shall be as the fat of lambs. They shall consume. Into smoke shall they consume away. There you go. That's another important verse to throw into my little list of scriptures to talk about when you want to talk about hell. As far as when you want to talk about every scripture in the Bible that talks about hell, don't neglect to include these Psalms, such as Psalm 37. Verse 10 I had. Now I'm going to throw 20 in there too. That's a good one. I'll probably look at the whole context. But when I do my discussion of the doctrine of hell, it's like, how can you talk about the Bible's teaching about what happens to the wicked when they are destroyed without going to the Old Testament and at least addressing the scriptures? You can say, okay, this is referring merely to their corporeal existence. Their corporeal existence will mean their body. This is what they would say. Their body will be gone, but they will actually be in a place, even though it said, I know it said their place, they'd have no place anymore. The wicked shall not be, you shall consider his place, and it shall not be the place where the wicked was, or the wicked should have been. It's like you imagine like you have a table set with people's names on it. John, Bill, George, Susan, Sharon, Chris, whatever. Just reaching for names. Oh, where's old Jill? There's no Jill. Her place is not there. Not only that, now there's a place there though for her, right? There's a place. There's a name card, there's a chair, there's a little seating, there's a place. Saying they're not going to have a place. There'll be no place where they would have been. They have their place taken from them. The idea of having no place. You know what I mean? Like I've always had a place right here. I'm in a spot. I always occupy some place. To have it taken away, it sort of implies something, I think. If you understand the second death as in one way in which it is taught, it makes a lot of sense. The wicked shall perish. This is, they always say, "Oh, perish" doesn't mean perish. It just means to have a, like when you get financially ruined. I got destroyed in a debate. They're destroyed metaphorically. That's what they'll say. It means metaphorically. I don't know how you're deciding when the metaphors turn. When do I turn on the metaphor and when do I turn it off? Come on. And and the thing that annoys me endlessly is that the failure to address that in any way, shape, or form. The fact that, as a teacher, I consider it my responsibility to tell you what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like if I'm doing something like interpreting something as a metaphor or as a idiom, or idioms are just idioms. If they're there, they're there. If I'm interpreting something as symbolic, in a prophetic sense, or not to be taken literally as as more of a metaphor for something else, I owe it to you to say why, and also to take responsibility for it, and also there are corollary issues. Why is torment literal, and the second death is just a figment of imagine? It's not a second death. It is a living hell. Obviously that's what hell is. Why do they even talk about a living hell? I guess because you go there after you die, but you're not dead. You're just not on earth. You're in a different place. They won't find their place. There you go. They'll have a different place in hell. Oh, but that there is their place. But it says they shall perish. You will look for his place. You will not find it. Now, this is interesting. If you know all the scriptures about hell, or any subject that could be anything that could be construed to be potentially about hell, you look at like Isaiah 66. They will go forth and look upon the carcasses of the men that have transgressed against me, for the worm shall not die and the fire shall not be quenched. There's this indication of they're going to go look at these people. I mean, doesn't it say this? Their torment goes on forever? No, it actually didn't. You're thinking of Revelation 14, where it says, the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. That may be even the first scripture you thought of when you saw this, because it gives you a little more insight into what it means by the smoke. They will perish, right? They shall be as the fat of lambs. They shall consume, into smoke shall they consume away. What happens when you put the fat of lambs in the fire? I don't know if you've ever I've never cooked a lamb either, but I've cooked a lot of other animals, and the fat in the fire burns to smoke. Like if you leave a fatty piece of meat on the fire long enough, eventually the fat will all melt away and burn away. Just like if you do a slow cooked roast, the big hunks of fat generally melt. If you cook it long enough, that breaks them down at a certain temperature. They break down faster than the meat does. And also the ligaments in between holding the meat together makes the meat very tender if you like a pot roast and stuff like that, right? Nice tender pot roast where the meat's falling apart and the fat has all been dissolved away. And that's the point, is that the fat, when it hits the fire, it burns up and turns into smoke. And that is what he is likening the wicked to. Their final fate is to perish and to be as the fat of lambs. Nowhere in the Old Testament, and it ought to be, by all rights, it ought to be there. It's funny, we have it's funny. It's funny. It's strange. It's not humorous. It's strange, weird, funny like that. That we have so many, teachers of the Bible, and they're all pro torment. And we have all these people who hate the Bible, atheists and unbelievers, right? And they'll go to the Old Testament, and I forgot who it was. It was either James, I forgot the name. It was one of those famous atheists. Whatever, we don't need to give him any publicity, right? I don't remember which one. But he was talking about the Old Testament God. And he referred to him as one of the most unpleasant characters in all of literature. Because, because of the things like the anger, the revenge, all that stuff. Like, I'm just simplifying. We could look closely at that stuff and see how unpleasant really is God in all this, But from the perspective of some people, I know why it would seem unpleasant. Right? So, the severity of God. Look at the severity of God in the flood. In the Old Testament, is notorious. It's like, oh, the Old Testament, hellfire and brimstone, and oh, the Old Testament is so primitive, and God is so wrathful, and he's torturing people and sticking them in hell. And that's not, the Old Testament never talks about any such thing anywhere. The closest you could get is Isaiah 66, which is clearly talking about corpses, which clarifies what Jesus was talking about when he quoted it. But we have all this misconstruing of the Old Testament as being this, it's just so full of, there's the law, there's the thou shalt not, there is condemnation, there are prophets thundering, but there's no God will take the wicked. The wicked, why does it say this here even? Why doesn't it say the truth? Why does it say, but the wicked shall never perish. The enemies of the Lord shall be as nothing man has ever seen. Because God will roast them over the fire, and they shall not be consumed. They shall feel the heat and scream from the pain, but they shall not turn to smoke. They will just smoke forever and ever. They will smoke forever and ever. Not their smoke, because the idea of smoke going up forever and ever, smoke always goes up forever and ever. It dissipates. They didn't have a word for dissipate. You know what I mean? To disperse. They didn't have a word for that particularly, for smoke anyway, so they described it as just going up forever. Or at least they didn't apply words like dissipate, because then it's like the smoke goes up, a column of smoke goes up, 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 up. You don't see where it doesn't go up unless you live in a far northern place where it's so cold that the smoke falls back to the ground, which happens when you get down to 20 below. Or lower than that. I'm not sure where it is exactly. At some point, temperature, it's so cold that the smoke rises a little bit out of the chimney and then kind of falls back to the ground. But generally speaking, when fire burns, the smoke kind of goes up and it dissipates. It's an analogy of nothing, of something being completely destroyed, consumed. The idea of consumption implies fully devouring something, just like perishing implies utter loss. And while it can be applied in other ways, I find it highly unlikely considering the rest of the context. Considering in the Old Testament, when God is supposedly this wrathful, angry God, it's nothing like Jesus, Mr. Forgiveness, right? That's the caricature. In the Old Testament, where God is just this horrible person, not one mention of torturing people forever, not one detailed account of how hell will work for the wicked, or where do the adulterers go? What's their torture like? And these are the questions people. That's what Dante started writing about in his Inferno, the torments of hell. The Bible contains no such things because I don't think the Bible expected the knowledge is not given because it was not meant to be. But that's not to say that I don't understand why people come to that conclusion, and that there aren't scriptures that you could, if you just looked at those alone, you could jump to that conclusion. And I think that's what it is they've taken in a partial, they've taken in the scriptures in part and interpret them based on parts and rush to judgment without looking at the question more fully. A lot of people, some of the decisions might have even been made about what people thought was expedient. Because a lot of people think that the threat of eternal torment is an important aspect of the gospel, like that gives it some spice or whatever. I don't know. I always thought death was threat enough, especially considering the fact that there is the possibility of everlasting life. One thing when you know everyone else dies, then you die and you're like, well, everyone dies. Hey, we all got to do it. Why am I going to get so up in arms about something that happens to everybody? But what if not everyone dies? Then it sucks to die. Oh, everyone else is going on. I've got to die. That sucks. As the fat of lambs. Psst. That's it. Consume into smoke till they're like. Psst. That's the indication of like they're going to be nothing. They will be like the fat of lambs dripping on the fire. Psst. It doesn't like, it's not like I say I'm going to make them like. What's something that lasts on the fire for a long time? They're going to be like steel on the fire. They're going to get hot and sweaty but never melts. It's not that hot a fire. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, so that's an important verse to remember. There are more in the Psalms and all throughout the Old Testament, little gems that you got to remember where they are if you want to cover all the scriptures. Like I said, I was going to go looking all this stuff up for my study, but while we go through Psalms, I'm going to be making notes. Because that's one place where I know there's a lot of stuff. The wicked borroweth and payeth not again. Bad boys. But the righteous showeth mercy and giveth. Now, it's the opposite of borrowing is not borrowing and paying again, and doing the paying back part. The opposite is juxtaposition as those who show mercy and give. Because when you borrow money and you pay it back, that's just what you're supposed to do. It's not particularly, it's a right thing to do, but it doesn't set you off. Remember, in Christianity, the demand of righteousness is greater than it was under the law. And it's not that the Old Testament doesn't address this like it does right here, obviously. There's something, the righteous do something more than, the righteous borrow and pay it back. No, it doesn't say that. It might be a scripture somewhere that says the righteous pay their debts. I don't know. But it was always seen as more virtuous to not get in debt, but instead be the kind of person who gives, not lends, gives. Someone who shows mercy and gives. It is something beautiful in the sight of the Lord. The Lord loves a cheerful giver and all that. So giving is great. I love to talk about giving, especially financial giving. I love that subject. I only say that because I remember Ms. Arnold Murray, my teacher, always used to talk about how much he hated talking about money. But he'd talk about it all the time. If you hate about it so much, why are you talking about it all the time? Why is every time I get a commercial it says, hey, how about a donation? Since I don't have any hang-ups about it, I love talking about money. It's a great subject. Especially in ministry. Because the way they fleece people for their money. And they borrow money and they don't pay it back. They welch on their debts, or that's welching on a bet. I forget what you do. You default on your debt. Well, sometimes people get in debt, and there's forgiveness there too. It's not the wicked. Maybe like the parable of the unjust steward. He basically, his master his master was creditor to a number of people. And he wrote down their debts in order to win friends and influence people, essentially. And it wasn't right, but he was commended for his shrewdness. Because there was a sort, because in a sense, he was gracious to them. He won their friendship, and even though he was ripping off his boss, that's what we're not supposed to do. I can't undermine God's law to please men. To change things so that people can feel good, so that people can feel like they belong or whatever. I can't just change things. But to those who have the power, debt can be forgiven. Of course, the debt of sin is paid by Christ, right? It's a debt we don't have to repay, right? We don't have to repay the debt of our sin. But Christ died for us. And that's a debt we can never repay. Yet, I don't see how you could say you believe in Christ and not want to return the love that he gave us, the love that he showed us, by giving service, by rendering service to God, by doing works, the works of God. I mean, it seems only fair, like as Paul said, is offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. It's your reasonable service. He's saving your souls. Least you can do is offer him your bodies, which means allow to be done in your body God's will. Before we yielded our members to unrighteousness, to uncleanness, and so now we should render our bodies to Christ, our members, meaning giving, or at least being willing, or even taking the initial steps, whatever it is that's in your power to do, to be obedient. You know what I mean? To be willing to do it, and also to be doing that which is possible to you. You know, some things are not always possible for us because we're all different shapes and sizes, and internally and externally, we all have different struggles. So it's not the same for everybody. But in as much as it lies in you to be able to deal with certain things, problems and difficulties, then do it. Because God already gave you the power to deal with that. You don't need to wait for divine intervention. But pray that you may receive the strength to carry out the whatever you have settled on, you know, as the is what your will is concerning such things, or whether you think it is God's will and you're following it, which is even better. The righteous show mercy and give, because that's what God does. He shows mercy. He gives gifts to men. You know? Gives us our lives, our livelihood, gives us our intellects. Even the lowest intellect is a gift. You know? It's just a lesser gift. Well, I wish I had a greater gift. It's like, you know what? We could have no gifts. Would you like to start off as let's go back to where we started off, which was nothing. I can go back to the emptiness of the blackness from which God drew me out of nowhere, out of complete ignorance and darkness, total separation from existence and non-being. And then suddenly there I am, waking up in the world. How strange it was to wake up in the world. I don't know if you remember. By my first memories as a 3-year-old. Just the world, knowing about it, understanding it, asking questions about it. My early questions were about death. Because right when I came to consciousness and started forming memories, my grandfather died. And so I became fixated on death at that time. For such as be blessed of him shall inherit the earth, and they that be cursed of him shall be cut off. I say, well, they'll be cut off and put into a box somewhere on the other side of the universe. Okay. That doesn't jive with other things said about things, but that would be the interpretation of someone who disagreed. They'd be like, oh, cut off. That's symbolic of something else. It doesn't, the literal meaning of not literal, but when they talk about things being cut off, the general idea of death and disconnection from life and reality and all that is usually inherent in that thought when we talk about cutting things off. There's certainly a lot of scriptures about cut. You look that phrase up in the Bible software I use, you look up this phrase like cut off, and you will find a lot of uses, and it's going to be very demonstrative of what they meant by that. And it's not just like ostracism. It's not about ostracizing people. It's about truly being cut off from life. When you're cut off from God, they talk about separation from God, and I think that's not wrong. That comes from 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, I believe. The idea of being separated from the glory of his presence, but also the idea of being cut off also indicates an idea of separation. But also the idea of losing life, because to be cut off from God is to be cut off from the source of life. I don't think, since it is in him we live and move and have our being. How can we ever live and move and have any sort of being outside of God? I mean, if we're not in him, so what I'm saying is, like, I don't know how you could ever separate hell from existence as we know it. Meaning you have to somehow be connected to God in this world, and I don't know how you can have a world that isn't somehow connected to God, or people that are alive are not somehow connected to God and sharing in the life. Here's what I want to know. Here's a good question for people that believe in hell, and I just thought of this for the first time ever. When Jesus was on the cross, it says he gave up the ghost, right? Father, into your hands I commend my spirit, right? And he gave up the ghost. And the spirit went back to God. As is written in Ecclesiastes, ere the golden bowl be broken, or the, golden pitcher at the fountain be shattered, or whatever, it's these metaphors for death. Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit return to God who gave it. The spirit of life, when you die, returns to God, because life belongs to God. Your soul is you, but it belongs to God also, but it is you individually. Spirit, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that spirit is the same as an individual, as a soul. They are often connected and often used interchangeably. But sometimes spirit is used in place of the idea of the spirit of life, meaning it actually means the life force of the person sometimes. And it's hard for me to tell exactly when, which, and where what it's referring to, because there's no definition of soul, definition of spirit. They're both things we can't see, but we think we possess. I mean, you can kind of see spirit, but you're seeing it through the way it acts on other things. Like when I'm talking, I'm particularly earnest. Even right now, as I'm talking, you can see my spirit animating my face, giving me a particular aspect of how I look, how I speak, the earnestness or lack of it. It's being moved by the spirit that's in me, my spirit, also mingling with God's spirit, the Holy Spirit, because he is also within me. So when I die, my spirit goes back to God, who gave it. And in some sense, those spirits belong to God. How can there be spirits that God gives that are life, that belong to him, that is from his very breath, that is using to keep people alive in hell? I mean, the purpose of the spirit being there, of those spirits' presence in hell, would be to maintain the life of the denizens of hell. I don't know, it just seems odd to me because, the thing I thought it's like, so the spirit which returns to God is not going to return to God in their death, but rather it's going to go with them. The spirit he gave is going to go with them into a state of everlasting, literal torture. And I just think it's silly. I know it's traditional and all that, but it's like, I've been around the scriptures for long enough that I just think that they just misread it. And it's not like I'm saying the apostles misread. I mean, it's like there were 3 views on hell in the 4th century. I got a book that says, according to the research, that it was there. There was the traditionalist view that we all know and love or hate, depending on how you feel about it. Then there's the annihilationist view, which is pretty much my view, even though I don't like the word annihilationist because I didn't pick it. And then because I don't think in terms of annihilation, but it's a good term. It's fine, It's like, it's whatever. Okay, fine, yeah. Let's talk about the scriptures instead of talking about what you want to label me. That's how I feel about it. So God's blessing causes us to inherit the earth. Curses cause us to be cut off. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way. We take steps, we do things, God orders it. That's like, all things work together for good for those that love God. A good man is going to have his steps set in order by God. Through either, on two fronts. One, I listen and obey. And my steps conform to what God says. Oh, step here, step there, Paul. Walk like this. Yeah, and so my steps are ordered by the Lord. But they're also ordered by the Lord in the sense of like, if I start to misstep in a way that's beyond my control, that is significant enough that the Lord, the Lord needs to protect me, he will. I've misstepped and needed God's protection. And from the bad things that could happen to me, God has always delivered me. When things got too tough for me and strong, and the enemies seemed to be closing in, and and everything just seemed to be going wrong, it's like the Lord always, always, always has come through for me. And what I mean is that He would bring me peace and the right knowledge that I would be able to bear and go through whatever I was going through. And sometimes even working a miracle, or at least softening the blow so much that it would not utterly destroy me. Because there have been things in my life that could have destroyed me. But God always made sure that it was somewhat mitigated by His, presence in my life. So He orders my steps, tells me where to go, even pushes me in the right direction sometimes. And I follow the orders He gives me, too. I follow His orders, and He's also watching me to help me keep my feet from slipping. So that's good. It's like you're riding the bike, and your dad's walking along. Like when I teach my kids, when you teach a kid to ride the bike, you get them going, you push them along, and then you let them go. And maybe you hover there a bit while they're trying to get going, like with your hands on either side, in case they fall. But you don't want to just keep holding them. If you keep holding the kid while they're riding on the bike, they'll never learn how to balance it properly. If I got a kid trying to learn a bike and I'm like, put my hands on his shoulders, okay, pedal, and I'll hold you steady, and I just do that, it'll take forever to get him to ride properly. You have to eventually take your hands off of him and let him balance, and let him use his God-given ability of his inner ear to tell him when he needs to shift his weight one way or the other to keep him falling off. And it's just a question of needing to practice that a bit until you feel it. And God does the same for us. It's like He is there to protect us, but He's not going to do everything for you since He gave you gifts. What did He give you gifts for? He gave me gifts so He could do it all for me? That doesn't make sense. So while the work of our salvation, of course, and Christ's sacrifice, that's all done for us. I don't need to do anything about that, thank God. God, if I had to take care of my sin, what would I do? What would I do about my sin? How could I get rid of it? I couldn't get rid of it. I don't have enough plastic totes to stuff it all into and bury it or cast it into the sea, weigh it down with stones and get rid of it. Only Christ can free me from such things, and that's good. But, and what a lot of Christians miss is like that God expects us to, we put our trust in Him. Oh, you put your trust in me. Okay, good. I'm going to be judging you. I'm going to judge you on that basis. I'm going to expect you to, if you put your trust in me, I'm going to hear from you again, for one, I put my trust in you, O Lord. Talk to you again in 10 years. Why is the phone going to ring? I don't want to answer it. It's almost never anything good. Oh, let's see. It's like, I feel like it's a show. It's like, who's on the phone now? Hello. Yeah. Well, it's just a robot. Robot from the phone company wants to talk to me, probably about my overdue bill. That's all right. We'll talk to you, Mr. Robot, just a little later. I don't know. I always imagine like it's something really important, so I got to answer it. I don't know why I let it ring sometimes. Okay, so we're just about done here. Where were we? Okay. Though he fall, he shall not utterly be cast down, for the Lord upholdeth him with His hand. We talked about that just now. It's like, look at, well, it's sort of like I said, I got my steps. I do the best I can. Though I may stumble, and that's what fall should be seen. Like he fall, but not utterly be cast down. You know what I mean? Stumble, but not fall is another way to say it. Or fall, but not be broken. Fall, but not fall off the path. You know what I mean? So I may seem, and what it's saying is, you may see a righteous man stumble and fall. You may see bad circumstances, accidents. Anything. You may see anything come about that causes you to doubt, is God really with them? Gosh, my hair looks funny right now after I changed my headphones. It's like all super curly in the back. Anyways, So like, you can seem to fall, you can seem to have all these bad things come against you. But because God is with you, the Lord upholds you with his hand. He uses his hand. It is his work to hold us up. So while he does want us to learn to order our steps according to his ways, to obey him, right? To show mercy, to do all the things he's asked us to do, he is ultimately there to save us in case we slip. And because we put our trust in him, we know that he'll be there, that he will be ready to save. So we'll pick up with verse 25 tomorrow. That's a verse my pastor friend used to quote all the time. I've never seen the righteous forsaken or his seed begging bread. I don't know. Though we have setbacks, I've had many setbacks in my life, but God has always kept me from being utterly destroyed. You know what I mean? And I do mean that in the metaphorical sense. There are metaphorical destructions, no doubt. The question is, when do you apply it? It's not the question, can we have metaphorical destruction? Of course we can have a symbolic destruction. Of course we can say something is destroyed without actually destroying it. But we can't compare it to the fat of lambs and say we're talking about the same thing. You know what I mean? Like when I burn up the fat of an animal and I call that destruction, that's different than calling bankruptcy destruction. Or calling some other, you lose your job in your house destruction. That's a form of destruction, but that's not the same as saying like, yeah, when we lost our house, it was like we were the fat of lambs in the fire being burned up and turned to nothing. I'm like, that's a bit of a hyperbole there. How'd you really feel? Because that's a bit intense. I'm like, you're still here now. Yeah, but I felt like I was nothing. Well, okay, maybe. I don't know. We'll bring it up with verse 25 tomorrow. Thanks for joining me in this study. I look forward to being back again, continue studying the book of Psalms. Psalm 37. It's a long one, but we're coming close to the end. Remember, we're going to stop in the 40s. I forgot exactly which one, but I won't forget to check once we hit Psalm 40, and we will we'll move on to a shorter New Testament book, and maybe something else before we go back to Psalms. I don't know. The next section is not as long. This is a big section, right? It's divided into 5. We're going through 40 of 150 Psalms, which means we've covered when we finish, we'll have covered nearly a quarter of the Psalms, but we'll ultimately be dividing it in 5. So see what I'm saying? This is a large section. So anyways, thanks for joining me. I'll be back again tomorrow, Lord willing and weather permitting. Until then, I just screwed up. I hit stop recording instead of the music. I don't know why sometimes I just do things wrong.
I have more understanding than all my teachers, for thy testimonies are my meditation. I understand more than the ancients, because I keep thy precepts. I have refrained my feet from every evil way, that I might keep thy word. I have not departed